I grew up in a fairly normal household. My parents were not alcoholics, but our household was a little bit on the tense side. My parents loved me and my needs were always met on a financial level. On an emotional level, I felt disconnected from people. I didn't feel like I was able to receive the love that people were giving me. I had a traumatic experience at the age of 8. And through that experience, I adapted the belief that I was unworthy, unloved, disgusting, and that people were going to abandon me, that I was always going to be rejected, and extreme fears of being alone, which caused me to push people away. I isolated myself from my family. I had a very difficult time making and keeping friendships. I became very angry, and I caused a lot of turmoil, arguments, and fights within my house, which created even further distance with my parents. I became suicidal around the age of 12. I started cutting shortly after. I was put on antidepressants and immediately started abusing them. I started drinking shortly after that and had found an escape from everything I was feeling. The extreme loneliness, isolation, and fear. I felt as if I didn't belong in my house, in my own body, or anywhere in the world, and really felt I was too bad of a person for God to love me. I moved out of my family home at the age of 16. Within 1 week, I met a much older man and got into my first serious relationship. The relationship was very unstable. I got pregnant and had my first child at 18. For a while, that kept me on the straight path away from alcohol and drugs, although I was still suffering with severe depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. My relationship ended when my daughter was 2. I got into another relationship soon after and quickly became extremely physically abusive. Because of my inability to be alone and being consumed with fear, I stayed in the relationship, and not long after the abuse started, I turned to street drugs. I continued on this path of destruction for the next year or so and would cry every night for God to end the misery I was feeling and living in. I was consumed with so much guilt and shame for the life I was giving my child, and yet could not stop using and couldn't stop the abuse she was seeing and living in. I thought she would be better off without me, and I would be better off if I no longer had to feel the guilt and shame. At 21, I became pregnant again for a second time and immediately stopped using drugs. I thought the pregnancy would fix me and fix my relationship and the abuse would stop. I was ecstatic and over the moon excited. I thought, this is it. I'll never go back to using drugs. I'm cured. My twins were born beautiful and healthy, but they were born into a house full of chaos. It was still so emotionally sick, and within 2 months of their birth, I turned back to drugs. My partner and I got married shortly after, and I continued on this path of drinking and drugging for the next few years, missing the most important years of my children's lives. I was there in body, but was neglectful, selfish, and self-centered. The drugs were my priority. When my children were 7 and 3, the police got involved in a domestic violence incident, and I was forced to place them with a family member until I went to treatment. I completed treatment, got my children back, and was able to stay clean for the next 7 years. My relationship with my husband stayed the same. My depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts amplified in sobriety. My emotional state was extremely unstable. At times, I would spend 3 months at a time unable to get off the couch. I was still unable to care for my children, even sober. I was still filled with the guilt and shame of the past, my behavior, and the present situation that my kids were witnessing. By this time in sobriety, I had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, OCD, major depressive disorder, major anxiety disorder, and PTSD. My life was a mess, my marriage was a disaster, and my children were suffering greatly. I was on so many different medications and nothing helped. Nothing seemed to work to deal with what I was feeling. After 13 years, my marriage ended, and I had a very difficult time dealing with that loss. I had become so used to living in that situation and in the abuse that I couldn't make the smallest decisions for myself. I had never worked outside the home and had no friends. I was so reliant on him that I couldn't go to the grocery store alone. I was paralyzed. I yet again turned back to drugs to find the ease and comfort I was looking for. I wanted everyone around me to fix what was within me. I put so much pressure on the people around me to take care of me, save me, rescue me, always the victim of someone or something. For the next 6 years, I would get a few months or a year of sobriety here and there and could just not seem to keep it. I was not in active recovery and not going to meetings. I was living in self, using drugs, alcohol, relationships, and men to try and fix all my internal feelings. And when prescription drugs didn't work to take away the suicidal thoughts and internal turmoil, I would turn to street drugs. I had no idea who God was or that he cared about me. I thought, how could God love someone like me? I know during this time my parents were praying for me hard. My mom always encouraging me to come to church with her, and my dad always telling me no matter where you go and no matter what you do, I'll always love you. By a true miracle from God, I ended up at Union City Church for the first time in late August. I signed up for LifeLab, and within a week of starting that journey in LifeLab, God removed from me any desire to consume drugs, including prescription drugs and alcohol. I had a spiritual awakening, and I haven't looked back. I've been sober 7 months, and God's gotten me farther in 7 months of recovery than he did in the first 7 years I was previously clean. Today, I'm in active recovery. My mental health diagnosis no longer define me. I know God and have an intimate relationship with him that I cherish. He fills all the empty spaces I had in my heart. I have a wonderful relationship with my children that grows stronger and more beautiful every day. My relationship with my parents has gotten better. I've been given the gift of forgiveness for myself and others. I've been able to help others free of judgment. I no longer live in shame. I know God's love for me is so great that it's hard for me to fathom. God truly saved me. I've been blessed with so many people that have touched my life in such positive and profound ways in the last 7 months. I'm filled with gratitude for this beautiful gift of recovery I've been given. And I just wanted to share a life ideal that I wrote out. I will place my trust in God and actively pursue my relationship with him. I will have willingness to turn my life and will over to him on a daily basis. I will be honest with myself and others so that I can continue to build deeper relationships with God and others. I will be open so I can be accountable for my actions. I will teach my children about God and lead by example so I can have a deeper connection with them. I will value motherhood so I can love my children the way God intended. I will be present and protect my children. I will be selfless in my actions and always consider their needs. I will be cautious with the emotions of others, and I will have healthy boundaries for myself and respect the boundaries of others. As a daughter of God, I will see my value and protect my virtue. Sex will only happen within the confines of marriage. I will respect the conviction God places in my heart, and I will be a woman of value and morals so that I'm living by the Spirit. I will carry a positive message to others and let go of bitterness and anger so that I can be present in my relationships and stay active in my recovery and service work. I will have daily time devoted to God in worship and prayer. Thank you. Yeah.